الحضور الكرام، نبدأ الآن فعاليات الجلسة الثالثة، الابتكار وتكنولوجيا المعلومات. المتحدثون سعادة المهندس حسين بن ناصر لوتاه، مدير عام بلدية دبي، فليتفضل. ستيف وزنياك، مؤسس مشارك في أبل. باتريك باودري، كولونيل متقاعد في سلاح الجو الفرنسي ورائد فضاء سابقا. أنوشا أنصاري، مؤسس مشارك ورئيس بروديا سيستمز، ومدير الجلسة صديقنا رز خان. Please welcome on the stage.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to have you here for our session. I'm Riz Khan, very honored to be your moderator for this session of the Knowledge Summit, which is entitled Innovation and Information Technology. Now, in reality, that suggests quite a broad range of topics, but in the time we have, we'll try to focus on some particularly interesting areas, and we have a wonderfully diverse and experienced panel to help us. I'll get to them in just a moment, but you know, I was thinking before this session how when it comes to technology, just what I've seen in my industry, that of broadcast television and radio news, what has happened is mind-blowing. When I started out at the BBC all those years ago, we were just starting to lose cameras using film. We went from film cameras and machines, editing machines and devices the size of coffee tables, now to an era where we have everything is digital and handheld. Stories are told, you know, from basically a mobile camera. I mean, literally, technology has gone down to the size of pretty much a handheld mobile phone. So it's quite remarkable. And even these new devices do 100 more things with 1,000 times more the quality. But I keep thinking, well, when it comes to our expectation of what innovation and technological advances are, sometimes our expectations may be a bit too high. I heard a story of a man who was getting on a train in London going towards Heathrow Airport, and the train was quite empty, and he saw a man sitting there with a couple of pieces of luggage, playing with a device on his wrist. And he watched in curiosity as this man fiddled with the device on his wrist. It was like a watch, but you know, this was a few years ago, before the smartwatches came out. He kept watching. Finally, he sat next to him. He said, "What is that? You keep fiddling with this thing. What is it?" He said, "I'm an inventor. You know, I like to innovate, and this is a new scientifically advanced computer watch." He said, "A computer watch?" He said, "Yeah, it does. It's amazing. It'll project an image. You can have a keyboard virtually projected. You can play with that. It'll tell you the time. It gives you GPS locations." And he went on with this list of things. And the guy was amazed. He said, "Listen, you know, I want one of these." He said, "Oh, this is only a prototype." He says, "No, really, I want one." He said, "Well, it's going to take a little time to develop and perfect a few little things." He says, "Look, I will pay you for this device. I've got to have it now." And he said, "Well, you know, it's not ready. It's not completely ready." He said, "Look, I'll pay you whatever you want. I'll write you a big fat check here right now. I'm a wealthy man. I will pay for this technology." And the guy thinks, "Well, I've got another one. This is one of my prototypes." And he says, "Look, all right." The guy says, "Yeah, come on. You'll use the money for your research. You can advance it." So the guy writes him a big fat check there and then in the train. And the guy takes off the watch and, you know, he starts to hand it over. And the guy is really happy and starts walking away with the watch. And the man says, wait, and gives him 2 suitcases. And he said, "What are these?" He said, "Don't you want the batteries?" So sometimes we haven't quite got there. Having said that, we do have a fantastic panel here who can help us to discuss these topics. So I want to welcome first His Excellency the Engineer Hussein Nasser Lutta, who's the Director General of Dubai Municipality. He's helped the municipality win more than 30 awards and is involved with a number of other organizations, also a member of the Executive Council of Dubai Government. Steve Wozniak, as mentioned just now, co-founder of Apple in 1976 with Steve Jobs. Hands up if anyone has any kind of Apple device. There you go. Can we have a round of applause for the man we have to say thank you to, please? Of course, he helped redesign the computing industry in such a radical way with Apple products, and that's led him actually to being awarded the highest honor possible for America's leading innovators, the National Medal of Technology in 1985. Great to have you here. Patrick Baudry is France's most renowned astronaut and a UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador. He served as a lieutenant colonel in the French Air Force and became the second French citizen in space when he joined the crew of NASA's Space Shuttle Discovery. And he actually trained for scientific experiments in space. As a chief test pilot for Airbus, among other things, he's also flown more than 15,000 hours on 400 different commercial and military aircraft. He's actually flown them, as opposed to me, who has been on them night and day just as a passenger. So I'm glad to have someone with your experience and skill here. And he became a Goodwill Ambassador for UNESCO in 1999. Also very honored to have Anousheh Ansari, who's the co-founder and chairwoman of Prodea Systems. She's had more than 2 decades of successful serial entrepreneurial leadership. Plus she became the first female private space explorer, making her also the first astronaut of Iranian descent. And she's received many awards and honors and is actively pursuing ways to enable social entrepreneurs to create positive global change. So very honored to have a great panel here for our discussions today. I would like this very much to be an interactive session. My TV shows were always about taking questions from the audience, and I really want today to be something where you can take part and speak directly to our wonderful panel here with your questions and your comments. It's a chance for you to talk with these amazing people. So I'll moderate this pretty much as a Q&A session. But I'll start off with a question to each one, just to get the ball rolling as far as getting their perspective on what they see as far as innovation and information technology. And I'll start with Mr. Luther. Your Excellency, you know, Dubai is considered something of a technological miracle when we see what's happened. The UAE, in fact, has been a world leader. But when we look around us and we look at how the city innovates, how the region innovates, what do you think is that marriage of innovation and information technology?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As you said, city of Dubai, one of cities the most growing on the world these days. On last almost 15 years, there's a big change, you know, in moving of the cities toward the futures. The future was planned not only in technology, it was also planned in competition. That means His Highness Sheikh Mohammed always put us on the race tracking and asking us to go for number 1. That has made a big challenge between all the departments, all the companies, even in the private sector, is to challenge each other and to give the best. From that spirit, we are from local organizations worked hard to give the best for the city of Dubai. So if we classify the city as number of requirement, there is a goal. The goal was to be smart and sustainable. So there is a goal we have to achieve, is to be smart and sustainable. And from these 2 elements, everybody has put all the plans to achieve or to reach that level. And as also His Highness Sheikh said, on the track, on the racing, there is no end line. That means everybody has to keep on going to give the best. With these guidance, we believe our work going toward the future of city of Dubai.
Thank you, sir. I'll ask you a little more about that as we get into the conversation, but perhaps I could go to Steve Wozniak now and ask about something that I know you have a big passion for, which is bringing out innovation and creativity in young people, in students. Where do you think the positive moves are, and where do you think the failings are? What can we do?
I'm glad you opened with a joke, because to me, humor and creativity are very similar in a lot of ways. If you're going to be creative in designing a new product or a new software, a new app that leads you to a different way of life, you very often go off in a different direction than people have gone before, and then the end product achieves the same goal that people want, but sometimes a lot better. A joke, you tell a joke, and you get our minds going in one direction, and with the punchline, it's, there was a different meaning to the words. You had to make it up from fiction. You have fictions in your head, like science fiction. They say that a lot of today's technology represents things that were in movies like Star Wars and TV shows like Star Trek and what the science fiction writers wrote about, space travel for one, and that we want these things. That's very important. It's important to know how to create things and to have creative people, but people that have a want and a desire to create something is more important than ones that are told, here is what you will do. Now, your personality tends to settle and be constant. Are you a creative person? Are you an innovative person? Are you going to go and try to explore the world of new thinking and new ideas out of the box? Your personality settles around between age 18 and 23, say. Wow, that's a big difference. Yay, humor, creativity. Somebody created something. Somebody thought, and yes, very good. So, your personality, some people wind up being creative people, always trying to think, is there a better way to do it than has been done before? Is there a better way to do it than I have even thought of doing it before? And are you going to pursue those goals? And I go back in my own life and I see how so much of my own creativity matched a lot of extreme skills in engineering, but it came about in those years in high school and the university. And I like to go back and encourage people. Now, I think a lot. Early primary education even. A child is born with a creative instinct. They want to explore. They want to discover everything about the world. When they can't even move their arms, they kind of want to touch things they see in a house that have big colors. They want to basically learn, how does the world work? If a sound occurs, they turn their head towards the sound almost from the day they are born. The curiosity is built into us. But a lot of time parents say, you will only do expected things at expected times. You will only behave in very strictly controlled ways. When you go to school, you might want to see what's in all those drawers in the classroom. Oh, you aren't allowed to open the drawers because there are 30 kids and the teacher can't let everybody open every drawer they want to. So the numbers of students per teacher, you get told, don't be different than everyone else. You are called intelligent when you get good grades in school. We often say that intelligence, academic intelligence, equals creativity, at least if it's in the sciences, the things that we can get knowledge from and learn about the world and in the past and the future. But the funny thing is, the right answer in those subjects is the exact same answer as everyone else. Is that creative? Or is that it's not your own answer? We talk about learning facts and learning how to think and use the brain. Now, I cannot give you a formula, here's what we can do to let students use their brain better. For one thing, by 8 years old, this is true at least in the United States, by 8 years old, the teachers can tell you which, about half of the students or more, have given up and decided, education's not that important to me. And they do it probably because there's a few real smart people in the class that always have the answers. I wanted to be a teacher my whole life. I wanted to be an engineer first and a teacher second. So I went and I taught for 8 years. Secret, no press, in the local public schools. And I taught a subject I could do well, how to use computers, before anyone ever had computers really, for all the school subjects. And I did it because I wanted to. And I found that when you teach, a good teacher who cares, one-on-one can never fail. One teacher, one student, never fail. That doesn't mean that every student that has a family is going to get good education, because a lot of families don't value it highly, or they aren't smart enough to teach it, or they don't have the time. But one teacher can never fail with one student, or with a few students. One of the things that I found in my teaching was trying to bring out creativity. It's less important what I teach, more important that I make the students want to learn it, that I make things fun. And I played with that, and I thought, you know what? For all of history, people have spoken about the good teachers and what we can do to change schools, to make schools really bring out creativity and thinking for themselves among the students. And we all have examples of a few teachers that were that way and helped us in our lives. But I don't want to say the same thing that people have been able to say for 200 years, because they were as bright as me and they thought of the same things to say. I'm not going to add to the conversation. But I thought when computers came into school, a computer could watch a student answer questions and correct them instantly, rather than telling them, wait till next day to find out if your homework's right. I thought that was going to make a big difference in how smart students came out of school. And they didn't. They pretty much come out the same as they always have. So it didn't make a big difference. And I sit down today and I say, what could make a difference? I'm not going to suggest reorganizing schools and different classrooms and teachers that will give a little more of their own time and making classes fun. I'm not going to say that because that's been around for hundreds of years. What I'm going to say is something that didn't exist before. This is how I used to design products. Something that nobody had ever thought of before. Well, one thing that does not exist yet is a conscious computer. We're already seeing are these devices that we call computers, the real computers out in the internet on the data center. They have a lot of senses. They act like a friendly being. We see young people talking to them as though it's a best friend, as though it's a person. What if this became my best friend in the world that knew my heart and my soul better than any human? I would trust it to guide me and let me be taught. If we could have one low-cost thinking with a personality, looking at my face, acting like a human, really being a human and not just a piece of machinery, if we could have that as my guide, I could study all the things that I'm interested in. And I could ignore the things I'm not interested in at a very early age. Oh, it sounds like heresy. You can't propose that. That's not how school works. Well, school could never work that way because you had to have one teacher teaching 30 students all the same things, the whole gamut of classrooms. But in the future, we might be able to do that. And I found when I was in the university, I loved computers. I discovered them at an early age when there was nothing about them in the schools. I discovered all the best things in life outside of school. And I love computers, but it's a university. My gosh, I would buy the textbooks and I would start answering every single question. Saturday and Sunday, I would hardly sleep. And by the time class started on Monday, I was halfway through the books because I loved it so much. If you love something at a very early age, maybe it's chemistry, maybe it's mathematics, maybe it's carpentry. You should be able to go as far as you can, but we aren't able to provide that sort of access to teaching everything possible with today's school system because of monies. Because of monies. Monies for schools are the important factor in class size, the most important factor in how creative the students come out. How much money is there? Where does money come from for schools? It comes from the government. How does the government split slices of the pie? This much for schools, this much for roads, this much for infrastructure, this much for technology, this much for military. How does the government do that? It's based on votes. In schools, do the students get a vote? No, they don't. A family of 5 that wants good schools for their children has no more voting power than a family of 2 that doesn't want to pay for them. So that's something that we should think about correcting someday. Maybe a family of 5 is a little more important when it comes to deciding monies for schools.
Steve, thank you very much. Interesting points raised, and I'll pick up on those as well. And interesting what you said, excuse me, about thinking outside the box. I don't remember the exact details, but there was a fantastic experiment done not long ago where children and adults was asked to solve problems, and they were given certain things to use. For example, solve this problem using a pencil, this, and whatever. And the children who didn't have the box that adults do would come up with things like a giant pencil, which no adult would, because, of course, no one thinks of a pencil once they reach a certain age as being anything bigger than a standard pencil. The kids said, why can't the pencil be giant? Why can't this be?
Well, that's like the big companies in our lifetime that have changed things so much, from the Facebooks to the Apples to the Microsofts to the Googles, all came about from pretty much young people. They weren't tied up with already knowing how to do it, and they could sit down and figure out, write the book themselves. Rather than read the book and trust that the answer's in a book, write the book themselves and find a way. It takes the building, the maker mentality to do that.
Well, interesting, because that leads me on to Patrick and to ask about a very interesting point you and I were discussing, the difference between curiosity and intelligence. I'm going to leave you to explain.
Me, myself?
No, okay. Sorry, that's for Patrick, and I'll get back to you, Patrick. Steve. Sorry.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. I am very honored and proud to be with you and to have this opportunity to talk about education, about future, about innovation. Riz, your question is very good for me because, you know, I consider that mankind has a characteristic that all the other species on the earth don't have. And this characteristic is not intelligence. Intelligence, you know, it's quite, even animals are intelligent. No, our characteristic is curiosity, capacity of imagination, of creativity, of laughing, as Steve told us, you know, humor. We have that, and we are the only species on the earth having this capacity of dreaming, of imagining, of creating something different, completely new. And on my part, you know, my dream was the main engine of my life. And I dreamt to fly when I was a little kid, and I could fly. I was a fighter pilot, a commercial pilot, test pilot for all types of aircraft, chief test pilot in Airbus with all the Airbuses, you know. And finally, you know, I could fly and I could use my creativity, imagination, improving and making new aircraft, new way of flying. And in space, I did not fly, in fact, to make scientific experiments like Anousheh. My dream was to fly to go further, to go beyond the limits which were my limits so far. And so today my dream is flying to Mars. Already today we should be working permanently on the moon. Instead of that, we are flying around the Earth like Gagarin 60 years ago, and for me it's amazing. Space is not really the place where imagination, ambition, and all these qualities are developing in the best way today. But anyway, the main thing you can build for the other people living with us, living with you, living with everybody, is to educate the children. That's the most important thing, and their imagination and creativity will give us the way, the means to solve most of the problems we have already and that we will have in the next future. That's the basis. That's the most important thing, is education. And that's the reason why I think as all the people, most of the people here, I fought all my life to give education to children. I had the chance, you know, I was looking at the artist painting, you know, just before our session. And he started by Africa. I said, my God, I'm not very humble because I was born in the middle of this continent, and he put this continent in the middle of the world. So I am, in a way, in the middle of the world. You know, and humility should be the first quality we should have too. But that was a way to paint the world, which was very nice. And so I flew into space. I am the first African guy having been to space. I went into space with the first Muslim Arab, Prince Sultan bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, who is a great guy and very great friend. And that was the best part of my life. Finally, in your life, the best part is what you know different, you know higher, you know best, and the main thing are children for the future and relationship between all together. And I think that new technologies, and we have plenty, and we will have a lot, you are working on it, and we're all working for creating new technologies, but there must be only tools to live in a better way altogether on our planet. It's what I think, and I thank you to have listened to me this way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's amazing. I don't think I've done many events, but I've never had two astronauts on one panel. And I so want to completely go off the wall and think out of the box and say, what's it like when you sneeze inside your helmet? Or, what happens when you get an itch? But I can't, because we're talking innovation and technology. So I want to ask Anousheh about what you expect to be some of the exciting areas of innovation that might have an impact on our future.
Well, we live in a very exciting time where technology is advancing at a very rapid pace. So we see things changing in a very short period of time, and a lot of the technology that's coming together is impacting many aspects of our lives. So one thing that I've seen as a trend happening is personalization and also augmentation around us. So what I mean is when you look at, when you go back, you see that we had mainframes and we had PCs we would sit behind. Then we started having personal computers, and then after that we have our handheld devices. Now we have wearables, and then pretty soon we will have actually implants. And a lot of these things allow us for personalization, but also at the same time augmentation. So right now they're all used to collect data and information and inform us about ourselves and the environment around us. Soon enough they will actually start augmenting, enhancing some of our abilities. A lot of these technologies can be used for a lot of goods. People with disability can benefit from these technologies to regain some of the abilities they've lost. But at the same time, we have to be very careful as how we use these technologies, because technology by itself is a tool. And the way we use it will determine whether it becomes a good tool and helps us and build a better future, better world for us or not. Also personalization, one of the areas that I'm very much interested in is additive manufacturing, 3D printing. And with this 3D printing technology, it's not just printing toys and little things, but it's impacting many different industries, from manufacturing aircrafts and printing engines to food to personalized clothing. I travel a lot, so I can't wait for the day I don't have to carry my own suitcase. I go into the hotel, punch in my card, everything I need is printed for me, and before I go I dump it in a recycling bin. But 3D printing will be changing a lot of things, and it will allow us to not transport everything, to be able to localize manufacturing of everything to our specific desires and specific needs. And the other trend that I see that's exciting is how different fields of science are coming together and meshing in order to create a new fields for us. And one of the things I see, we talked specifically today in this panel about IT. And to me, IT in future will not be a separate field. IT will be part of every field of science we see in human sciences, in even art. A lot of technology now is impacting how artists paint, and they're incorporating technology in art. So I think we'll see a big mesh of different fields of science coming together and creating different areas for students to study. When I talk to students in different universities and I see all these different fields they can go to, I get excited. I can't wait to be reincarnated or come back again or have another chance to live my life, because there's so many things I want to learn. And I look at the biomimicry field, I look at biotechnology, nanotechnologies, AI, all these different fields. But at the same time, the amount of knowledge available for learning is so much that new ways of learning, I think, will become part of, way of life. The traditional way of textbooks and classrooms I don't think we'll be around that much longer, because there's no way we can start from the beginning and learn everything and get to the place where we can actually add to the knowledge. We will not even have enough time in our lifetime to learn everything to get to the point that we are today. So I think there will be different ways of learning that will come in the future. And space, of course, I think will play a big role in our future. We see a lot of activities that has spun from privatization of space, and a lot of now regular citizens are playing a role in the way our lives are impacted, and the research we're doing in space will change our everyday life.
Excellent, thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me open it up to your questions and comments. If you have something you would like to add, please do hold up your hand clearly and we'll get a microphone. Thank you, sir. We'll get to you first. Do we have a microphone there? Keep your hand up, sir, so they can see you, and we'll get the microphone across to you.
I think it's great we have two astronauts here, because that inspires people. So much of what we have in today's technology was inspired by the space race and rockets and the needs. But listening to these two, the one thing I got in my head was, when we go to Mars, I hope the person on Mars has a camera that is fed back so I can wear my virtual reality
and experience it.
And be there.
All right. I think we'll get there for sure. Sir, your question. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Steve, I was trying to ask you, but I think you answered questions before the questions. My current friend, who is an old friend of yours, if you recall him, Kumbar, Mr. Kumbar, do you know him?
So sorry, if you just hold the microphone a little closer to you, because it's very quiet up here for us.
Echo.
Yeah.
Your older friend, Mr. Kumbar, who worked with you a long time ago in Silicon Valley. I don't know if you recall him or not. But one question came to my mind: the way Apple and other industries are developing their current digital technologies. And I think this is what prevents us from getting the utmost from the IT technology. Isn't it because of the way our ideas and innovation is built on our traditional experience? Is preventing us from getting the utmost from the IT technology?
It was very hard to hear that, but were you saying that the limit that we have to innovation is our past experiences, the way we've been conditioned to it?
I'll repeat the question, sorry. My question was, I think what prevents us from getting the utmost from the digital technology is the way that we build our experience from innovation. Our innovative ideas now is built on our traditional way of thinking.
Traditional way of thinking, yeah.
So I think we need to go back down to schools to develop new digital smartness or digital...
Right. That's what I was getting at. It's an excellent point, that perhaps the way we think, the traditional way of thinking, Steve, limits what we can get. It restricts really the maximum experience out of digital technology and innovation. Perhaps we need to create a new way of smart thinking in schools from an early age that allows us to harness
and a little bit that makes me think of the comment that schools will not be coming out of books and the old way in the future. You have to open your eyes to life being changed very much more drastically than you really think. You think that your culture's going to hold and you want to keep it the same. This is the only way that works. I had a lifetime, though, of thinking differently. When I was young, I was shy, afraid to talk to people. I was different than others and scared about that, but it made me feel good about my independent thinking. And I would work I was designing computers when we couldn't even touch a computer in schools. I just discovered it and loved it and didn't think I'd ever have a job doing it. But I would design a computer, and then when I was done, I would think, is there any way? I would go through manuals. I would spend hours and days looking for, is there a way that I could cut the number of parts down from 80 to 79 to 78? Can I think of any clever ways to use one part in two ways, or use a part in a way that it wasn't intended that saves pieces? And it was very efficient, because I said, I want to be a good engineer. Engineering is efficiency. And efficiency means less in for more out. Well, that, in the end, I wound up I had this magic period in my life, design that was so different than anything else anyone had ever considered. Books, for example, for color television would all the engineering books discussed all these waves and mathematics and calculus to design color generators. And then I came upon an idea for a way to do it instead of $1,000, $1 with a single digital chip. I realized that if I put the contents of that chip into a television the right way, every television would think it was color, but it didn't match any of the engineering books. It was illegal. It was wrong. I did a lot of things that way. And I was motivated because I wanted it so badly. I had to come up with a way. The best things that you do that are out of the box, very different than before, are because you have very little money and you can't afford to do it the old way. Or B, you've never done it before in your life, but you're really smart. And you sit down and you figure out the way to do it. I call it writing the book instead of reading the book.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to wait for more hands to go up and get a microphone to someone. Thank you, sir. As we get the microphone to you, I want to ask Mr. Luta a question based on something very interesting you said, sir. And you said one of the things that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed had said was there's no finishing line. And I wonder, when it comes to innovation, how important it is that there is never a finishing line, that people don't think that there is a set goal, but there are infinite goals.
Well, you know, all the cities has a lot of these departments, it's a services department, so the city has the momentum to be going on. So the time now is the time, you know, everybody is counting the times. Before, everybody is having, you know, waiting maybe 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Today is the time is running. That means everybody want to do his job yesterday. Therefore, how we innovate things to make it faster, easy, and better. And that is where our tracking system goes. For example, we are in municipality, we just introduced a project called 10D. 10D we be using, having a lot of visitors, you know, every day, more than 500 to 600 consultants, you know, who's doing the building or the contractor. Today we reduced that almost 80% because we started doing with the audio video, a smart audio video. What I mean by smart audio video? That means I loaded the system with the drawings, then I communicate with the consultant through, you know, the monitor, and, you know, we can solve all the problem without he is moving from his office, without he is driving the car, making less pollution, and looking for a parking. But that's not the end. What's my end is, I want the computer to do the checking for me and accept it or reject it. Therefore, this is the next step where we are working on it. So these things is coming where we believe in a matter of years, you know, with a lot of, you know, people from Apple, maybe from the space also, because the space is going to give us a lot of satellite and you know, information transferring. They will come a day, everything is going to go by electronics. It will be, you know, coming. But, okay, what will the people do? Then
that's the question, isn't it?
That's the question. Yeah. I believe the people, they will go to the space.
To escape. Thank you for your patience, sir.
No problem. Thank you very much, everyone. My name is Sultan Al-Subhi. I'm a 23-year-old young inventor. I'm exhibiting outside, and it's a pleasure here to talk in front of all of you. It's a great opportunity. I just came back from Penn State. I go to Penn State. And honestly, I stopped college for many reasons, some of them what you've said, Mr. Wozniak. But before that, honestly, I'd like to ask everyone to give Mr. Jamal Huwairab a round of applause, because he's the person who is behind the setup outside. So if we can just give him a round of applause, please. Thank you, sir. Thank you. My question to Mr. Steve Wozniak. I'm I would say, the founder of an app called Readathon. And during this app, we're trying to revolutionize the way people read. Because in this part of the world, the annual reading time is 6 minutes per year. And that's really, really low. And me, as a young inventor, and with the team that I'm working with, we're trying to incentivize the way that people read here. My straight question is, the way that you founded the App Store, where people can go in and like pull in apps, some of them are paid and some of them are not. We're trying to do the same concept, but with the book store. So kindly, after the panel, if you would come up outside, I'd like to show you the app. I might like to listen to your ideas. That'll be really helpful, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's people like yourself that I admire all over the world. Ones who have an idea of ways to help society, help others with some technological achievement, and go at it. One of the first things to note is that being able to create something isn't necessarily as important even as marketing it. Getting the word out, knowing what to put in, what to leave out, how to get it well accepted by people. And that might be an example of that, but yeah, it just sounds so important. All of the smartest people that I knew throughout my life did a lot of reading, particularly when they were young.
And Patrick, that's an important point, isn't it, that inspiration is a big factor. I know, of course, with the work that you have done. Yeah, and I was thinking...
books.
Yeah, so...
Movies.
So as I was asking Patrick now with space, you have the space as is such an inspiring thing. How do you see using some of the advances and some of the exciting things that we hear about as inspiration for people to take this step to do something new, to innovate?
Yeah, I think space is like in our life on the Earth, you know. When somebody has a new idea, that gives the way to find the right technology to solve the problem of this new idea. You know, I was thinking, listening to Steve and to Anousheh, in fact, we work a lot and we create a lot and we improve a lot of technologies. But there is one thing, apparently nobody is thinking of improving the way we can handle it. It is a time. You know, Albert Einstein gave us a way a long time ago, and the time is above us, is among us, it is leading our lives. We try to improve the health, we try to improve the way of voyaging, the way of doing the things, but nobody tries to handle the time, to compress the time, to expand the time, you see, that's, you know, when you work in a new area, technological, scientific or so, you must stay very humble anyway, because something is above you, is among your capacities anyway. But our imagination is limitless, and I'm sure that one day somebody will find a way not only to improve the different technologies, but also to find another way to improve our life on our planet. I am convinced of that. And I am fascinated by the students and the children, because most of them, or some of them, have a great capacity of imagining and creating, and we don't know. And so each time I have the chance to talk to students, I think, my God, maybe one of these guys will be inventing something, creating something like Steve did. It changed my life, you know, Steve Wozniak, in a way. I remember I trained for 2 flights with the Russians at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. On board of Soyuz, there was no computer at all. At all. When I flew on Discovery with the American in 85, we had a laptop. I didn't know how to use it. I didn't care because we had practical problems, you know. But that was already such a big step. has a big step, has the big step of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin working on the moon, in fact. And so, things are going through our lives, and we have to stay open to everything, and some of us will be able to take us beyond what we imagine today. And that's great.
Let's see if we can get some more questions. Any hands going up? We'll come to you and then I'll get to you at the back. Just quickly squeeze in a question actually for Anusha here. And when you talked about the factors that you feel are affecting our future and that might create innovation, what do you think are the factors that might affect the speed of change? What might actually make a difference and how fast we can innovate?
Well, I think a lot of things are in sort of a natural fast track. So we've all heard of Moore's Law and how by pace of change in technology and the reduction of cost, accessibility change. So what we've seen, or in my opinion, one of the things that has really fast-tracked rate of change is the fact that more people have access to the knowledge. So you're getting innovation from places that you least expected it. I'm part of the X Prize Foundation, and we do a lot of different competitions. And the winners or the finalists in the competitions are usually who are not experts in the field. So the innovation is actually not coming from the experts, it's coming from people who, for example, we had a 100-mile-per-gallon car prize. And the winning team was a group that came together out of a real estate person who had a passion for cars and went and talked to a mechanic and said, hey, let's try to design something together. So it's coming from people who have an inspiration or passion, and then they don't have the limitation of the knowledge they have been told that this is how things work. So because they don't know how things work and they're just going about learning it, and there's now a way for them to go online and learn about anything they want to know. So we're getting people getting involved in innovation, and that's expediting the rate of change.
Thank you. We have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to try and get these next three questions of the hands I saw go up. And because we're so short of time, we only have time, and I'll get those in, and then we'll get the answers. So, sir, you go first, and we get the microphone to the gentleman back there.
Thank you.
Very close, please. It's very hard to hear up here.
My name is Ahmed bin Suraya. I work with the Dubai Multi-Commodities Center. My question is to Stephen Wozniak. A few years ago, Nokia dominated 95... I'm here. Nokia dominated around 95% of the market, and there are a lot of theories on why it failed or lost its share. One that caught my attention was they did not invest in patencies. They thought they could develop it on their own and not field these ideas that came from the younger generation or what was coming in Silicon Oasis. They felt they could ring fence it on their own and develop their own R&D. And from what I understand, the big players, the Facebooks, the Apples, and the rest bought a lot of patencies, and not just the ones that make the big headlines, the ones that are below 100 million, the 50 million, 20 million. How much of that plays a big role on the future of the technology industry in your view, and what's your opinion on that?
All right, before we get to that answer, let me see if we can get a microphone. It was the gentleman who was further back had his hand up. Sorry, sir, it was the gentleman just a little further back. Yeah, I'm sorry, because we're so short on time, I want to get that. Let's get the microphone to him there. I'm sorry, there's going to be, and then there was one other gentleman, I didn't see where he was in the middle, he put his hand up, but, oh no, he's there at the back, that's it, yeah, that's it. I'm sorry, I went to the hands in the order they went up. It's actually the gentleman there, sorry. Sorry, our arranging his seats arrangement. We're so short of time, I'm sorry that we have so many questions and we'll only get a couple of these in. I want to get these three and then we'll answer them and we can wrap up. We're keeping our microphone runners really healthy.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Is it possible if I can talk in Arabic?
Say again?
Is it possible if I can talk in Arabic?
Go.
Or do you prefer to talk in English?
Oh, well, we've got very little time, so.
Fine, no problem. My name is Nasser Al-Masri. I'm from Kuwait, from the Arab Youth Federation. I have two questions. One of them is related to what's have been said in the morning about the quality of education in the Arab world. Till now, I'm having a big problem with the ministers of education. They are thinking for us, not thinking with us. So they are creating certain curriculums, and they're asking our own kids or our own young generation to study whatever that they are making for them.
Okay.
Nobody is making a curriculum according to our own needs, our own realities that we are, or hobbies or interests that we have.
Okay.
The other question is about the making of Apple. Till now, we are just followers of your own way of making things, like the other industries in the Arab world. When are we going to be makers of that industry? When are you going to have your own academy teaching us the way that you made your own things, the hardware and the software? How can we make the maintenance, and how can we make what's so-called the add-ons to it? Till now, we are just followers of the makers or the technology. Till now, we don't have our own knowledge that we can transfer to the other side of the world.
Okay.
We are expecting to have what's so-called Mac Academy or Apple Academy, General Motors University, Nissan Training Center,
Okay,
Toyota,
sir.
and so on.
In order to get an answer, I'm going to have to stop you there, just so we can get the answer. And then the last one is the gentleman at the back. We can just get that microphone. Stand up, sir. And I'm so sorry in advance to those who have their hands up. We don't have time for it. It's not my fault, unfortunately. We've got a very tight schedule. Thank you.
My name is Walid Al-Bashir. I'm a serial entrepreneur. My question to Steve Oziak, you've been talking about the component size when you were designing those computers, and now we see it's getting smaller and smaller. What do you think the most radical innovation to see in the coming future, the near future? Do we see the smartphones going? Do we see more embedded device, wearables? And what is the impact of this on the social life?
All right, great. Great question. I'm going to leave that one till last. Let's start with the first one. I'm going to actually perhaps get Steve, I know a lot of these were directed to you, but let's just start with that Nokia dominating the market because it didn't invest in patents and in outside technologies. It basically wanted to ring-fence itself and create its own. Is it necessary to go outside as well to grow?
I only remember the part about Nokia, and I was going to discuss that.
That's the one, yeah.
So was there a different question? Because it was hard to hear with them.
Yeah, that was it, basically, yeah. So the fact...
Alrighty, well, Nokia got disrupted. Nokia wound up in a bad situation. Funny thing is, companies develop a culture, a way that they build their products, a way they see the business world and the market. If you are a very large company, your business doesn't go away in a day. So the iPhone came out. The computer people were starting to imagine what the world of mobile technology would be like if bandwidth increased and increased and increased. And they saw that formula, and it did happen. Nokia sat there and said, you know what, our business is not going to be hurt the first year, the second year, the third year. As far as we can see in the future, our business is going to be just fine with the sort of very inexpensive, simpler phones that we build now. And even our smartphones somehow don't capture the imagination that computer people want as well. I've been with companies that their own company culture, Hewlett-Packard, building scientific calculators. I was designing them. And along came a simple calculator using arithmetic expressions the way 10-year-old kids are taught to do in school. So we thought, it's a joke, it won't be able to do the big calculations. Turns out it was a lot easier and more natural to use. You don't recognize the easy, more natural approach if you have your way of doing things that takes thinking. You think, I still have to do the thinking. No, you don't. Good technology saves you from the thinking. Another question was about innovation being directed by innovation officers of countries.
Right.
It could be innovation officers of companies, I would relate to better. It's sort of the idea that, oh, we're up above you. We're thinking about it in a think tank, and we're going to come up with the ideas of what our company should build. And we expect you brilliant engineers who have been trained at finding clever solutions. We're just going to expect you to build what we tell you is needed, rather than let you do some of your own dreaming and come up with your own ideas. There should always be a leeway to let a lot of engineers find their own way. one of the things to do is to look for the sort of people who are makers, the sort of people who have built projects, hardware or software, all their life on their own and brought them to completed ends, even if they have no money value, even if they're not for a company, they're just for themselves, because their intellect to being able to define a goal and find a solution to get to that goal is unmatched. And they're driven by the need to feel, I had a part in deciding what is good and what we should work on. There's no way you could replace that kind of motivation and praise. Chief innovation officers, in my mind, should inspire directions and support directions, but they should look. And when they see somebody with a good idea that's not their own, they should be willing to support it and jump in and listen and say, oh my gosh, here's another really good thing we didn't see. At Apple Computer, we ran into this many times when we saw the mouse-based computers. At Xerox PARC Center, more than that, we saw a management system and the people that worked on that sort of computer that said, if we discover tomorrow that everything we've worked on for the last 3 years, there's a better way, simpler, better for human beings, we would switch in an instant. They were that pure. The next question was...
Well, so I'm going to pass them around because there was just a couple. There was one I wanted to actually put to Mr. Luther, and just because I know the Minister of Education is here and I don't want him sneaking out, but twisting the question a little bit to touch on the subject, how much collaboration does there need to be with the public in creating innovation? When you have governments, when you have authority deciding on certain paths, how important is it to make sure that it's very much in tune with what the people need?
Well, it's very important, because we are one society, and the society, if they work together and they are exchanging ideas, if they are working on innovating things, it's very important for that, so everybody in the end will be happy. Happiness is also the target. It's a key thing for everybody is to achieve that. I mean, why we do all of that things? To be happy. Happiness, it is the goal for individual people. Therefore, we have also to understand sometimes, individual person, he cannot think for everything. Maybe he has his thinking in a certain circle around him. But when it comes for a bigger organization, they think a bigger circle. So there is a lot of things maybe they don't see it. So you cannot say if that organization take decision, they say, no, they cannot take that decision because they are not going to my thinking. No, they are thinking bigger circle, so they are thinking with a lot of people. The communication between the society and the providers, organization who provide is very important. But in the end, everybody is toward a lot of things. There are a lot of things we have to work it. Some of them cannot work it, cannot do it. Sometimes people see it so easy, but sometimes it's not that much easy. But the future, it is coming to make it that easy, because in the end, we are achieving to have everybody happy.
Okay, that's an interesting point. I'm going to end with that in a second, but I want one line from each of you, and I ask you please to keep it to one line for that last question. What do you think will be the most radical innovation coming up in the future? So, Anusha, if I could start with you, please. Putting you on the spot a little bit, but just off the top of your head.
Well, as I said, I'm very excited about the 3D printing technology and being very interested in space, how that can change the equation for us being able to actually have permanent, place in other planets. So, for example, a trip to Mars or a trip, building a place on the moon, permanent place on the moon, would not require us carrying everything with ourselves up there. And if we forgot something, then it will take, if you're on Mars, it will take several years to get to you. So it's not practical. So I think that will radically change our ability to actually build a permanent place for ourselves in space.
Excellent. Thank you. And Patrick?
For me, I think great improvement technology will be an Apple computer working perfectly.
There you go. Here's a man who's had to tap a few keys.
No bug, nothing. It just does what we expect. It does. Which was the case 20 years ago, Steve.
Every computer will fail. We should kill the people that brought these things to us.
That's right.
Okay, I think there's no one right answer. Any answer to this question is equally good. I see things that are like artificial intelligence. I used to, be a computer expert and memorize all the commands and the ways to use computers. And now I have my smartphone. And do I want to go through a structured process of tapping here and entering data there and getting the job done real efficiently and it looks like I'm as fast as a young teenager? No. I just want to have a thought in my head and speak a natural thought. And no matter how poorly I phrase it, the machines understand me. I love it when the machines understand me. They aren't really artificially intelligent. It's only simulated intelligence. It's only programmed intelligence. But it sure does make life seem to me like they're a little bit smart and they're more of a real helper.
Interesting. I'm going to summarize that as I want to be understood, which basically is the key to marriage. So, Mr. Luther.
Well, what I see in the future for the cities, I wish I have to see cities without cars.
Cities without cars, there you go.
I believe today there is a lot of innovation is coming. You know, lately I've seen one of the board is a flying board, is the opposite to the gravity. It's just flying from the ground with a 10 centi, 15 centi, which means it's flying against the gravity. So I believe one day, we'll find the people, it is moving with the tools, and that means we will not have a cars, we will not have a pollution, we will not have an accident, and this is the future, what I believe in it.
We hope so. I leave you with a thought, because we are desperately short, and I do apologize to everyone with the lack of time, but I leave you with a thought that accountability also comes into this. And I know a few of you heard me tell you about this in the past who've met me, that, accountability became a big thing for many big corporations. And one of the US airlines...
Lady want to
I know, just we're so desperate.
You have to be fair.
I have to be fair. All right, so the lady gets a question. I've been overruled.
This is to...
No, go on, please. It's not working?
It is working. To Steve, you just mentioned voice recognition. I'm a partner in a tech firm that developed the first Arabic voice recognition engine. Thank you.
That is so good.
Yeah.
My question to you is, other than personal use that you just stated, what do you think the possibilities are for voice recognition, and where do you see it having most impact? Thank you.
Voice recognition has been just growing, getting better and better and better. For example, on my smartphones, they often understand my words but don't understand my meaning yet. And then the next year, they start to understand more of the meanings. They're getting more robust, able to take many forms of input and get the correct output. Sometimes it's really strange. One thing I discovered, we're thinking about, how does the mind work? We don't know, but Google hits on a lot of answers, because you used to ask a smart person a question, and now you do a Google search and you get back tons more information, so it replaced a part of the brain. Well, when I ask iPhone a Siri question, sometimes it gets the words and it doesn't know what I mean, and sometimes Google now does. And one of the things is they base their meanings of words on what are people searching for. Meanings of phrases based on what are all humans searching for. It's like collective consciousness. There might be a definition in a dictionary for earphone. But if this week there is a politician somewhere in the world named Earphone that's in a scandal, everybody's searching for that, and Google now will know that that's what you mean. So I think what the masses of people are looking for in information helps define maybe how the brain works and processes info.
Understands the words but not the meaning. You're back to marriage again, aren't you?
Well, good. I appreciate that.
So just a quick thought, the accountability. So I heard that one of the big US airlines said, we've got to have more accountability. And they decided that when the pilot does a bad landing, the pilot has to be the one who takes all the complaints, because normally the crew gets all the abuse. So after one really terrible landing in the US, all the crew hid in the shadows, and the pilot stood at the cockpit door watching all the passengers get off. They were all a bit shaken up after this terrible landing. And no one said a word. And he thought, I've got off the hook. But at the end, this elderly lady was taking her time getting off. She was the last passenger, and she stopped and said to the pilot, "Sonny, can I ask you a question?" And the pilot said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Did we land, or were we shot down?" So, accountability. Please, a big round of applause for our panel. Apologies to you who put your hands up and couldn't ask a question. Apologies to our next moderator, as we've just gone over a little bit. But thank you very much again. Thank you. Thank you.
حقيقة نشكر السيد رزخان على هذا الحوار الشيق والممتع أيضا، وخليني أقول إجازة 5 دقائق منه وترجعون إن شاء الله للقاعة نستكمل الجلسة الرابعة إن شاء الله.